Today we'll be talking about the Second Amendment. Arguably, there is no greater or more controversial amendment than the Second. It's read in the Constitution as a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The original intent of the Founding Fathers remains obscure. The Supreme Court has done little to clarify and is often reluctant to even rule on Second Amendment cases. As what makes it relevant is as there's increased violence, you see more mass shootings. A couple of examples would be the Orlando nightclub shooting in Florida and the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting also in Florida. As cases and as tragedies like this continue to happen, the desire for gun control wages on, and it only intensifies. And so there are a couple of Supreme Court cases that really ruled in favor of gun advocates. And the first would be the District of Columbia versus Heller. That was in 2008. And essentially what it did is it ruled that a gun law in Washington, D.C. was unconstitutional. And it prevented the legal purchase of firearms within city limits, and it required gun owners to lock up their firearms in either gun safes or to have trigger guards on them, even in their household. The Supreme Court ruled that this was unconstitutional. What makes it a landmark case is that it's the first Supreme Court decision that ruled on the basis of the Second Amendment alone, meaning that there was no other precedent used to rule in this case. And so essentially what it did is it allowed for, it solidified the gun activist view of the Second Amendment. In that an individual had the right solely to bear arms. It was their constitutional right. There was another case that in 2010, that was McDonald versus Chicago. And again, it's a city statute that was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. And in this case, a man wanted to buy a firearm legally, and this statute would not allow for him to purchase one. And the Supreme Court ruled that this was unconstitutional due to the 14th Amendment, which is the Due Process Clause, and that the right to bear arms was in fact protected by the due process, and the federal and state government could not infringe upon those rights. Obviously, as violence increases and as tragedies occur with gun violence, this debate will continue because just with anything else, one bad act, one terrible atrocity often gives everyone who owns a firearm a bad name. And there needs to be balance in trying to find out a way to regulate gun ownership without infringing upon the rights of law-abiding citizens. And until that can be reached, this issue will continue to come up, and there will continue to be arguments over should Americans be able to buy firearms at will and buy whatever they would like, or if there needs to be some government regulation. Clearly, our founding fathers thought that citizens should be able to defend themselves not from foreign powers, but from the government themselves, the government itself, rather. And it's this original intent that is unsure and unclear, but until the Supreme Court is ready to rule on and make a ruling on some of these cases and clarify the Second Amendment, the argument will continue to wage on. And frankly, it's uncertain how they would rule. And unless it can be fixed in totality, they risk making things worse for one side or the other. Thank you.